Hello and welcome. I'm Carol DeChaine, your intuitive spiritual guide for practical matters, Marconics multidimensional energy practitioner, and your own personal life coach. Today we're going to talk about how to say goodbye. Sometimes people just don't. All of a sudden they'll disappear from our lives and they aren't there. Whether it's somebody ghosting us when we date or a friend who just stops talking to us. Sometimes, what do you do? Personally, if I really care about the person, I'll go running after them. If I don't, then it's kind of have to rethink because sometimes it's time to let go of someone and you think maybe you need to let go of them and they let go of you first. And when that happens, well, oops. Sometimes our pride goes, wait a minute, I was going to do that. But we need to take that moment and breathe and go, oh, yeah, I was going to do it. That's okay. They made it easy. They're the ones that maybe got me all up in arms and they said they didn't want to see you anymore. And you're going, oh, well, for me, first I get a little upset then I go, well, oh, come on. And then I get a little angry, not a lot, just a little. And then depending on the person, but if I wanted to let them go, then I realize at some point after a few breaths and a few moments, usually, or maybe 5 or 10 or 20 moments, I'll realize, oh yeah, I was going to say goodbye to them. Maybe this is okay. Maybe this actually, they did me a favor and they showed me their true colors because the universe knew it was time for us to break up or for us not to be friends anymore. And it's okay. Sometimes it's more than okay, but you have to take that step back to realize that. And that's how to say goodbye if you wanted to say goodbye in the first place. Because, like I said, sometimes it's time, but we aren't quite ready to let go. But we think we want to, but we're not quite sure. So, when the other person does you that favor, do take those few moments, take that breath, and step back and go, okay, I know I've had to do that once big time and a couple of other times just a little bit that didn't matter as much. Now, how do you say goodbye to someone you don't want to say goodbye to? I guess the question is if it's mutual or if it's really you don't want to do it. If it's someone you love with all your heart and soul and they passed away or they want to divorce you or they just don't want to see you anymore because some kind of insurmountable mountain comes up, what do you do? How do you say goodbye? And sometimes I have to say, when the insurmountable mountain comes up and you don't see why this person's having an issue with you, and you understand what the thing is, what their problem is, but you're going, but it's not a big deal. We can work through this. I don't understand. That's when you have to honor them and let them have their mountain. Because sometimes their life, well, always, their life looks different than yours. Their outlook is different than yours. And you have to realize, well, if you talk it through, which is what you should try to do if you really care about someone and try and figure out what's going on when you get to that ultimate. They're not going to stay with you. They're not going to be your friend. They're not going to be your lover or your spouse. Then you have to take them that step back and honor their whole existence and their belief structure and their way of being, even if you totally do not agree with it. Because especially they say if you love something, let's set it free. Sometimes that person will turn around and come back to you. Whether it's a friend or a lover or who it is, they will turn around and come back. And don't expect that by all means, but you have to be in the right framework, that right mindset to be able to go, okay, wow, can we talk about this? Can we go to a counselor? Can we figure out what's happening? And if they're just like, no, I'm done, and they break your heart in some way, that's when you have to be able to allow them to be who they are and not just yearn for them so much that you destroy whatever relationship you may have in the future. So if you go, I don't know if I can let you go. But that's on me if you can't see a way for us to be together. And then you have to find a way to heal yourself. And this is a big thing, I know. It's something that you can't just do in a YouTube video, but you take that time and maybe you go to a therapist or you go to somebody and you kind of mourn that person. You say, okay, wow, I really wanted to be with that person. So first you're disappointed and upset and hurt. You might get into the angry mode. It's like mourning someone. You go through all of those stages, But sometimes you can go through the stages faster than others, especially if you do it with love and going, if there's anything I can do to help you reconnect, I don't know if this is even possible, but if it is, once you have your time away, let me know. And we'll see where I am then. Because I have love for you. I would love to work this out. Especially if it's a friend. If you know you can forgive them at some point, then just say, leave it open ended, but let them go and say, I'm sorry. But I mean, I didn't do anything wrong, maybe, but I have sorrow that you're doing this, that you feel the need to move away from me. I find a lot of times that talking things through with friends is even better than a therapist. It depends on the friend, of course. So if you have somebody that you tell them, "Hey, you're my designated therapist. Could you just listen to me because I just need to talk. I just need to figure out how I'm feeling. I need to figure out if I'm angry or how I'm feeling because some people like me, I'm not that connected to some of my emotions. I I get stressed, but I don't realize I'm stressed. If I get angry, it's more obvious, but I don't do that very often. But you look at yourself and you go, wait, how am I feeling? And if you talk through what happened to yourself, you'll go, oh, okay, I know how I'm feeling now. Maybe I'm angry. Maybe I'm sad. Maybe I'm a combination of all these different things. But once you can kind of label your emotions, then you can kind of start breathing through it, meditating through it, letting that other person go. But they've already said goodbye. It's you to say, okay, now how am I going to do this? I know when I've seen, okay, this is maybe you've never watched it and you will judge me for this, but when I've watched The Bachelor or The Bachelorette, and I see the way people say goodbye, and some of them are so nasty when the main character says, I don't want to date you anymore, but some of them have such grace. They have such grace in it, and they work it out later and they go, I'm not blaming the other person. They're following their heart or they're following who they are. But that was really tough. And but they are very generous to that other person, and they say, if I'm not who you want, obviously follow your heart. But I really love you, and I'm sorry that this isn't going to work out. I mean, there are ways to do it, but when I see that, I go, wow, I could be so much more graceful in the way I say goodbye to people. Now, the ghosting thing is kind of different where they just leave. You don't know whether they're okay, whether they're sick, whether they're just no longer have an interest in you, especially if it's a dating thing. And nowadays it's become so prevalent that you probably just automatically assume that they're done, that they really didn't have enough interest, even if it seemed like they did as you were going along and you're going, wow, this is great. There's a possibility. This feels really good. And then they're gone. And you're going, hello? Were you married? Were you not really interested? Were you stringing me along? Were you a real person? Meaning, are you not the person you said you were? What exactly is going on? And you just have to kind of take that as part of what happens. And there's lots of little disappointments along the way when that happens. But you have to not only say goodbye to that person that maybe didn't treat you well, you also have to say goodbye to that possibilities that you already had in your head, that story you already had going of, oh, well, this is how this is going to end, or this is how it's going to continue because we're going to fall madly in love and get married and blah, blah, blah. And I don't know if men do that as well, but I know that they get incredibly hurt too. So therefore, when you're looking at it, don't just say goodbye to the person and the feeling you have when you're with them, but that story in your head that you've maybe made up. And a lot of people can't let go of that. And that's their truth rather than the real truth, of which is what was actually happening. Their truth is that story that didn't even happen yet. So make sure you know what you're saying goodbye to. Say goodbye to that person, but also say goodbye to that story in your head, that story, the live happily ever after story, or the story that this is the one for me, or I finally found that person. They seem to understand me so well. Where the heck did they go? What happened to them? Well, obviously, they aren't the person you thought they were. They aren't who you dreamed and envisioned them to be. So that's a really good reason to say, well, thanks for disappearing because you saved me heartache. If you weren't going to be there for me, thank God you left now instead of after we were along the path on that story I created. And then you just have to pick yourself up by, obviously, and start again. Or realize that I'm getting ahead of myself. The story is there and the possibilities are there, and I'm seeing this excitement in this whole relationship. Whether even it's a friend who you have this long history with, or even a short history with, you think they'll be a great friend, and all of a sudden they're gone. They don't bother returning your calls, or they'll call when they happen to pick up the phone and they'll talk for a short amount of time, but they kind of push you off fast, and you're kind of going, okay, this person is not my closest friend. It's not the one that I want to be around. Or you decide, okay, this person is so dear to me. They are worth chasing down. They're worth not saying goodbye to. I'm not going to let them say goodbye to me because they've been a friend for so many years. And maybe like I have a friend who likes to hermit herself when something happens. And so it's really hard to get a hold of her sometimes. And she doesn't answer her phone. She doesn't answer her messages. She doesn't text, but she will respond to email. So you have to learn about that friend and see, what do I want to do with this person or this relative? How do I keep in touch? And is it worth it to me to maybe chase them down all the time? And it's not that she always hermits herself. It's just that sometimes she's only prioritizing the immediate things in her life, which includes her family, as she should. But then your friends kind of go, hello there, here I am. And that's, do I say goodbye to this person? Or do I kind of hunt them down and tell them, I'm sitting on you and I'm not letting you not be my friend. Well, I'm going to chase you down and you need to really be there. And I have to say that it's worked both ways for me. Sometimes I try and I tell somebody, if you don't want to be my friend, you absolutely have to tell me because I'm going to keep calling you and keep annoying you because I care about you that much. I did tell somebody that, and she goes, I am so sorry. I'm such a bad friend. I will get back to you more often. And she has her moments. But somebody else I've said that to, and she goes, I'm just too busy to have too many friends right now, and I just really can't do it. So, and that's also the other side of that coin, where if someone decides that they keep after you and after you and after you, and you're going, I want to say goodbye. I don't want them in my life. What do I do? You can, of course, keep distancing yourself. Don't answer the phone, don't return texts, but you can do it occasionally. If you want them as a once in a while person, then don't respond to texts immediately. Or respond to the first one and not all the other ones that come up afterwards. If you get somebody saying, "Hey, how are you?" and that's all they say, you can just say, "Hey, things are going great. How are you?" and see if they want a conversation. But most of the time, if you are ready to say goodbye, you need to start distancing yourself. And that's on you. And I know it's uncomfortable. You may feel guilt, depending on the person, but you can't do that. You have to give yourself that gift. If you've outgrown a relationship, it's okay but do it in a kind way. And perhaps, and gentlemen, I'm specifically speaking to you, if instead of ghosting someone, just say, I found someone else that I was kind of talking to at the same time, and I'm really going to go with that person. And when somebody says that to me, I just say, I'm I'm disappointed, unless I don't really care and I was just chatting with them. But I'll just say, well, thank you for telling me. I really appreciate that. Thank you for being honest with me. I wish you the best of luck, instead of just leaving you in the lurch. So I would also recommend doing that for somebody else. And I have to say that I had dated someone about 6 times, I think 5 years ago, something like that, maybe even 10 years ago at this point. And we dated like 6 times. He was coming from an hour away. So we usually met in the middle. And I decided I don't really feel anything when he kisses me. And I don't really want to continue this. He's a great guy, but I just didn't feel anything. And I went, I think I need to tell him. So I was going to tell him the next time we got together. And I thought, oh, no, I can't do that to him. He has to drive half an hour to get to me, to our meeting spot. So I went ahead and I called him and said, I just wanted to let you know that I really think you're a great person, but I just, I don't see anything happening with us romantically. And I didn't want to drag you all the way to the restaurant, have you pay for a meal, and then me to tell you that somewhere in the middle. And he said, oh my God, I'm really disappointed, but thank you so much for doing that. Instead of just not showing up or not responding and just telling me, he said, I really saw a possibility with us, so I'm sad. But this is one of the reasons why I like you so much, because I really feel like you care and that you have those moments where you're not going to just leave me in the lurch. And so I recommend that to anybody because, I mean, think how you feel when somebody does it to you. It's better, especially if it's a brand new relationship, to say, I don't feel enough to keep going with this. And I have someone else I've been talking to as well, and I think I'd rather go in that direction and put all my concentration on that person. And that's fine. I mean, it's good. That way the person doesn't go, well, where'd they go? Well, how come they're not getting back to me? Or you continue the conversation, you don't really want to be there. And all of a sudden, they start to have emotions, and you're going, I think I'll say goodbye now. Finally, where you just don't start returning the calls. Think how that makes you feel. And know that sometimes it is time to say goodbye to people. So I think I've covered what happens when somebody ghosts you, when somebody is ready to say goodbye at the same time you are, and they say it first. But I will say um, the mutual thing is actually that happened with a boyfriend I had where I just went to him and I went, I don't know if I want to continue because I don't know that there's enough love here to keep it going. And he said, I really care about you, but I feel the same way. And it was like, it wasn't a letdown. It was it was a relief because it was like, okay, we're both in the same spot and this is okay. And that was the mutual thing rather than the I'm ready, are you ready, but I'm not saying anything and they say it first or vice versa. And then the last one, of course, is when you really don't want to say goodbye to someone. And that one is, of course, the toughest one. But if you can have grace through that, then sometimes people turn around and they come back into your life again. If you're not ready to say goodbye and they are, and they're done, at least they think they're done. And if you can wish them well without, even though you're hurt, depending on how they do it, if they're unkind or they just leave you in the lurch, then it takes a little more time to get through that. But if they just tell you, I'm so sorry that I just don't feel enough to keep going in this relationship or something like that, that hurts. But it's easier to have grace, in my opinion, at that point rather than somebody being incredibly unkind and saying hurtful things like you aren't enough of whatever. Then you want to self-protect, right? You want to have that self-defense mechanism comes in and you say, listen, you're not, I'm way better than you and you aren't worthy of me. Or whatever you want to say in some words, you aren't enough for me. You're out, forget it. You're not good enough looking. You're not smart enough. Whatever. You really want to say something back to them. And I totally get that. But I have to say that it won't get you anywhere. Maybe you feel good for a moment, but then the whole thing will hit you and you'll just feel bad about the way it went down. So even if they're unkind, if you can find a way to get through it and just look at them and go, that wasn't necessary. You didn't have to be that unkind in order to tell me you didn't want to see me anymore. Maybe they'll learn something and you'll have more grace for yourself and without going down to their level if they become unkind to you. And there are so many other things I could say in this video, but at least hopefully I've given you some ideas on maybe reflect back on how you respond to people, how you say goodbye, if you do a fairly decent job at it, or if you know you stink and you know you need practice at it. We don't say goodbye that often most of the time. I mean, people in your life may stay for a long time. Some people have a reason and a season, and then they're gone. If you play tennis with them and then you stop playing tennis, maybe you never talk to them again. But the season might just be someone to help you get through a hard time or for you to help them get them through a hard time. And then you're kind of done. You don't need that anymore, especially if the other person's constantly talking about the bad time and won't move on. You've been there maybe for a couple of years and then you're going, they wring me dry every time I talk to them. I'm kind of done. But you don't want to say it that way. You just might want to say something a little kinder to them that's something like that. But it may be time to distance yourself. Think about how you do it. Think about how you want to do it. And then give some of what I've said a thought. Because sometimes, well, usually, there's a better way than the way we do it. And you may not know what it is, or you may know and just not do it yet. Maybe your emotions get too involved, but it's okay. Whatever it is, you can always learn and grow through those situations. And maybe if you are way on the wrong side of the pendulum in your estimation of how you say goodbye to somebody, or maybe you never do because you can't, and so you have all these people hanging on that you don't know how to say goodbye to, I'd recommend taking one that you really don't see very often and just stop communicating with them. Especially if you almost never see them, they almost never say anything, and you're like, I don't really need them in my life. Start with someone easy. And after you feel like you've released them, then try someone else. So practice a little bit, because sometimes we don't do a good job when we get hurt and we don't know how to say things. So give yourself a break. Just practice and see how well you move on from where you're at. Know that you are already enough to be able to do all of whatever you want to do. So thank you for joining me here today. Please know that I'm here for you should you need a life coach, Marconics energy. If you're interested in that, you can look on my website at www.connect2joy.com. That's connect, the number 2, joy. And also I have a podcast of the same name, Connect to Joy, that you can look up on any podcast channel. And I'll also have the link to my main landing page under the video, but you can also go through my website for that. Until next week, by all means, please be kind to yourself and know, like I said, you are already enough to have a joyful and limitless life, whatever you may desire.